So there's a new social media app in town and everyone and their dog is talking about it. Obviously, I'm talking about Threads, which is Meta's brand new, shiny new social media app. In today's video, I'm going to be telling you every single thing that you need to know about Threads right now. So that will include what it is, how to use it. I'm going to give you a full demo, how its algorithm works, what your plan of action should be, like all of that good stuff. I'm going to fit it into one glorious video. So let's not waste any time and let's just dive in. So what is Threads? It's a brand new social media app that's been developed by Meta. Remember, Meta is the company that owns Facebook and Instagram. So they now own a brand new app called Threads, and it's basically being described as Twitter's rival, right? Because if you spent any time on the app already, and if you haven't, don't worry, I'll be showing you plenty of screen recordings. But if you have seen the app already, you'll notice that it looks eerily similar to Twitter. In fact, the whole purpose of it is very, very similar to Twitter. It is a text-based social media app where people use it to start conversations, share their own thoughts. And in response to the creator sharing this content, their audience can interact with their content by liking it, responding with their own comment, reposting or, retweeting, or is it rethreading? Is that the lingo we're using for this? I don't know. But you catch my drift. It's super, super similar to Twitter. It also reminds me a bit of like the old days of Facebook. And I'm going to be showing my age here. But do you remember 2010 Facebook era, where that was like the lead social media website and we were all just sharing status updates every few minutes? And it would say something like, Jade is feeling. And then I would finish it by saying like, stressed because I have GCSEs, Anyone who's a millennial is going to be listening to that being like, yeah, I can relate. Anyone else is going to think I'm a weirdo. But regardless, it is very reminiscent of old school social media sites, but specifically Twitter. Now, I'm willing to bet that the next question you want to ask is, why has Meta released a rival to Twitter? Twitter already exists. Why do we have another version of it? Now, without going too far into Meta's history, I think we all know that Meta apps like to copy other apps, right? Does anyone remember when Stories was released on Instagram and it was a direct replica of Snapchat? That is Meta's strategy. They like to copy what's working. Now, they're super clever because they've noticed there's been a huge rise in negative sentiment towards Twitter. And the reason for that, arguably, is partly because of their new leadership with Elon Musk being at the helm. I know they have a new CEO now, but Elon Musk is still very much the owner of Twitter. And ever since he took over the app, he's installed a few changes that have ruffled some feathers. For example, the paid subscription service, Twitter Blue, and also more recently, limiting the amount of tweets that you can actually see on a daily basis, just to name a few. So because of this rising negative sentiment towards Twitter, Meta, being the savvy social media company that they are, saw an opportunity. They thought, you know what, we can take the essence of Twitter and make it into our own, package it up neatly and market it as a safer alternative to Twitter. And that is exactly what they've done. And that has resulted in the Threads app being downloaded over 100 million times in the first 5 days of it launching. 100 million times. That's insane. It's absolutely insane, the success that it's seen so far. So with that all in mind, let's move on and let's do a demo of Threads so that you know exactly how to use it. Now, the first thing to know about Threads, especially if you're just getting started, is that it syncs with your Instagram account. So what I'm going to do for the purpose of this video is I'm going to create a separate Threads account, because obviously I've already got one. I'm going to create another one using a private Instagram account that I only use for like friends and family, just so you can see what the login process is like. So I'm going to click on my private account. And by the way, if you're feeling like you're missing out on anything there, you're really not. I literally upload like one post a year on that account. But anyway, it's going to take you through to the screen where you can set up your profile. So here you can say it's imported my name already. It's then going to allow me to write a bio, add a link, or I can click import from Instagram. So if I click that, you'll see that my bio and my link all directs to my main business channel, right? So then you click next, and then you can click your privacy. So either a public profile or a private profile. This is obviously my private account, so I'm going to click private for this instance. And then, and this is the fun part, it's going to take you through to this page, which will allow you to follow everyone who you already follow on your Instagram account. So obviously I've blurred out some names here because these are all my friends and family, but it's basically showing all of my friends and family who I already follow on my private account. And there's a button on the bottom which says follow all. When you press that button, it will automatically follow every single person who you're already following, which means when you open up Threads and you're ready to get moving with Threads, you already have content from people who you like. That is unlike any other social media platform that has ever existed. So once you've done that, you can click next, and then it's going to show you how Thread works, give you some tips for getting started. And once you click join Threads, it's going to create your account. Okay, so now what you're seeing is my public Threads account, right? This is the one that if you're going to follow me anywhere, this is the one to follow me on. Because let me tell you, I am not consistent on my private accounts. So this is my Threads account. As you can see, I have 4,275 followers. You might be thinking, my God, Jade, how have you done that already? Well, if you remember when you set up your Threads account, it had that follow all button. Most of the people who follow you are going to select that follow all button because it's just easier, which means when you create your Threads account, not only are you already following everyone who you're interested in, but you also already have a bunch of followers. It's like an instant community. It's incredible. So that's why I've got 4,000 followers on there, right? So the navigation's at the bottom of the page. There's the home tab, which is similar to any other social media site, where when you press the home tab, you're able to see content from people you follow, in addition to posts that Threads thinks that you'll like. There's also the search button, but I'm not going to lie, the search functionality on Threads isn't quite there yet. It's something they're working on. So at the moment, yeah, you can search for specific accounts, but you can't really search for topics or hashtags like you can on other social media platforms. There's then the draft button, right? This is for a new thread. So this is the button you want to press when you want to create some new content. So you just click on the button, you can write down a thread for the day. Here you go, some really interesting, insightful threads from me, just absolute nonsense. And then if you click the attach button, it will allow you to add a photo, or you can add a video of up to 5 minutes in length. A couple other things for you to be aware of is that there's a 500 character limit on all of your threads. And also you might be seeing people creating these really cool threads where it looks like they're creating their own story from one central thread. You might be wondering how you do that. Well, if we click on a thread that I shared recently, all I have to do is click add to thread and I can reply to my own post. And that's what's going to create this timeline of content all under it. So you know when on Twitter, when people say things like, here's 5 reasons why you need to have a morning routine, a thread, and then you've got all the content underneath it. That is how you achieve the same thing on Threads. As I said this, I'm like, oh my God, how clever of Meta to call this app Threads and basically take that term and nickname that was literally created on Twitter and make it their own. They're so clever. Anyway, so that is the basics of how to use Threads. There's also this little like button here, which is going to show you all of your activity. So people who've responded to your comments, your replies, your mentions, verified accounts, etc. Right? A couple other things to keep in mind before we move on to what you should actually be posting on this app. The first is to do with blocked accounts and muted accounts. So as you know, it links to your Instagram account. Now, what that means is anyone who you've blocked on your Instagram account will also be blocked on Threads, which is great. However, anyone who you've muted on your Instagram account will not be automatically muted on Threads. So if you're like me and you mute people because you're like, oh my God, like I want to support you, but your content gives me anxiety. And there's no shame in that being you, by the way. Like, I honestly tell my clients to mute people who give them anxiety on a daily basis. So if you're like me and you've done that, just be careful, because when you open up your Threads and you start using it, you're going to start seeing those people who you muted. They're going to start popping up on your home feed and they might start triggering you again. So just keep that in mind. You can mute people on Threads. It's just that you have to do it manually. It won't happen automatically. Another thing to know is that hashtags are not a thing on Threads at the moment. And that makes me so happy. The fact that there really isn't any like tactics aligned with Threads right now, and there won't be for a while, because let's face it, it is brand new, makes me so happy and calm. It just feels like this fun, free place where we don't have to worry about all these additional strategic things that we do on other social media platforms. Like, you don't really need to worry about that yet. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But in terms of hashtags, they just don't work. So don't bother trying to use them. There's no strategy around them. There's no certain amount that you should be using. Just don't bother. They literally just do not work at the moment, right? Also, quick word on the algorithm. Yes, of course, your girl researched the algorithm before I sat down and filmed this video. Yes, there is an algorithm in place. However, the head of Instagram, Adam Mazzari, has specified that the algorithm on Threads is a light algorithm, which is an interesting way to describe an algorithm. I feel like that's kind of how you describe, like, you know, low calorie butter. It's like a light butter, but no, it's a light algorithm. So the algorithm being light basically means that it is not fully dictating every single thing that you see. There's a huge chronological element to Threads still, which is great. However, it is still going to show you content from people who you don't follow in the hopes that you like that content. Now, I think this is really clever. Oh my God, how many times have I called Meta clever in this video? This is like a Meta fan video. It's not, you know, there are several cons to this app, and I'll talk about those a little bit later on. But an issue that Meta had with Instagram is that when they started sharing content on people's home feeds from people who they don't follow, people got very annoyed because it felt so opposite to what they were used to on Instagram. Yet other apps like TikTok, which have done that from the beginning, never had that pushback. So obviously when Meta's going to create a brand new app, they're going to ensure that they've got that recommendation element to it where we're used to seeing content from people we don't follow. That needs to be inbuilt, and that has to be present from the jump so that they don't have to do that later and then we all get angry about it again, right? So it was a smart move on their half. We don't really know much else about the algorithm, and I believe the reason for that is that it simply isn't very robust yet. As I mentioned, it's a brand new app, and in order for algorithms to really work effectively, it needs to have a lot of data so that the algorithms can learn from the data to figure out what content we want to be seeing. And it's just too new, and there's just not enough data, I don't think, for them to really hone in on that algorithm life just yet. So who knows? Maybe they'll never really hone in on it, and maybe we'll be like the old days of social media. But I'm not gonna lie to you guys, if that's what you're hoping for, I really wouldn't hold your breath. All right, guys, I'm gonna quickly interrupt this video just to tell you about some resources that are available in my description that are completely free and that are gonna be really useful for you if you're a content creator or if you use social media as a way to grow your online presence, right? I've created a brand new company. It's called The Creator Project. And the mission of the company is to help content creators get paid. So I actually have a free ebook all about different ways for you to earn money as a content creator. And I have an entire podcast, which includes interviews from industry leaders, brands, successful creators, agencies, the lot, that are all designed to help you thrive in the world of content creation. So if you're looking to level up, I've got links to all of those different things in my description. They are free, and I really recommend that you check them out. All right, shall we talk about what we should be posting? I think before we get into this, I need to make the caveat that I'm sure you're all fully aware of, right? I do not have any proven growth strategies or tactics or engagement tactics or any of that good stuff for you yet. I simply don't. We, as a community, and referring to like social media gurus, will start to have those over the months, right? We'll start to test and learn. We'll start to figure out what's working based on our clients and our community. But right now, none of us have that because the app is too new. So if you're looking for me to sit down and be like, this is going to be how you're going to grow, we're not there yet, but don't worry, at some point that concept will come. But for now, what I want to do is talk about your approach towards Threads so that you feel comfortable and confident sharing content on this brand new app. So one of the main ways that people are currently using Threads is as a community building platform and as a way to start a conversation. That is also how the head of Instagram has actually marketed the app, as a way to create public conversations. So one thing that I've noticed ever since that I've been posting on the app is that engagement there is a lot heavier than it is on other apps. So I can upload something and the likelihood of me getting a lot of comments as a response or likes as a response to that post is actually a lot higher than it is on other platforms, especially when you look at my following size, right? And again, the reason for that is because the app leans heavily towards conversation. So if you're thinking, all right, what type of content do I want to share? Think about your audience, who they are, and what they'd want to get in a conversation with you about, and lean into those topics, right? In addition to that, it's a brand new app. So a huge part of this is going to be a lot of test and learn. It's a great opportunity for you to showcase your personality, and that stands whether you're a personal brand or you're like a team of people running a business. Figure out what your brand's personality and tone of voice is, if you haven't already, and use the app to communicate that to your audience. Again, the word conversation could not be more prevalent. It's literally like one big DM chat with your audience. Think of it that way, right? In terms of frequency, and I've got to be really careful here because I really don't want to lean too heavily into this whole, you need to be posting 8 times a day stuff, because again, we don't know what the optimum posting frequency is on this app yet. However, what we do know is that the shelf life of your threads, so your posts on Threads, tends to be fairly short. So what I mean by that, if we compare to social media apps that we know really well already, on Instagram, your shelf life of your content is fairly short. You post, it might hit the algorithm, which means people might see it for about 24 hours. If you're really lucky, it might live longer than that. But for most of us, it gets shown to people for about 24 hours and people scroll past it and then it just kind of gets lost into the abyss. So that's a short shelf life. If you compare that to other platforms like YouTube, YouTube is long shelf life, because I'll post this video right now and it will continue to get views, hopefully, for months, maybe even years to come, right? So that's a long shelf life platform. Naturally, platforms where the content has a short shelf life requires more content to be shared versus platforms that have a long shelf life, which requires less content to be shared. So on Instagram, you post daily. On YouTube, you post 1 to 3 times per week, right? Do you see how the two things differ? I'm putting Threads in the short shelf life column. In fact, I think it's even further away from Instagram. Like, I think it's really short shelf life. I think you post and people kind of see it for maybe half a day and then it kind of goes into the abyss and it gets lost amongst all of the other content. So because of that, you need to post more. Naturally, short shelf life equals more content, right? So if you are desperate to have some idea of a posting frequency, I would recommend that you try to post at least once a day on Threads. But realistically, from what I'm seeing so far, is that people are posting multiple times a day. But remember, we don't know which option is going to get you the best results at the moment. We can only leverage what we know from other social media sites to try and give us a good idea of how often maybe we should be aiming to post. If you still feel super stuck, what I'm going to do is throw up some of the threads that I've shared so far, and I'll quickly just break down the rationale behind them and give my opinion on why they work, if I do say so myself. So a recent one that I shared that actually I think is my most popular one in terms of engagement was one that I shared yesterday. I was feeling very unmotivated, and I basically just told people like, look, I wasn't feeling motivated today, but here are a few things that helped. This is something that is very casual. It took me 2 minutes to write this, but it's also quite specific to my audience, and it's quite aligned with what I talk about already, right? I talk about entrepreneurship. I talk about things like organizing yourself, being motivated. So it worked for my audience, but it wasn't necessarily strategic in that way. At the same time, I shared a thread which said, this app is giving chaos and I'm loving it. That's just something that I generally thought at that time. It was relevant to what was going on because this was the first day that Threads was truly launched. But was it strategic? Was it trying to hit my goal or objective? Or was I just connecting with my community and sharing my tone of voice, right? So hopefully those two separate sides of the spectrum can give you a good idea of just how varied your content can truly be. The biggest piece of advice that I can give you if you're stuck is to think about your audience and think about writing something for them. And that is just broad marketing advice, by the way. Like, that advice is always relevant. All right, guys, let's run through some pros and cons to Threads in case you've gotten to this point in this video and you're like, I don't even know if it's worth my time. And by the way, I would not judge you if you felt that way, because when I first heard about another app, I was like, really? You know? Like, who's got the time? Alas, here I am. I'm on the app and I love it. So let's break down the pros and cons to using or joining Threads. One of the pros is that it is currently a safer space than Twitter. Note that I said currently because I don't know if it's going to stay that way. At the moment, it is a safer space than Twitter. The vibe there is a lot more rainbows and butterflies, which is far more my vibe than the vibe on Twitter, which can sometimes be offensive, let's just say. It's a safe space to go onto where you know you can scroll and probably won't see something that will ruin your day. Let's just say that. Another pro is that you get an instant community. Not only do you have the option to follow every single person you already follow on Instagram, which means you automatically get great content on your home feed, but you also have a bunch of people following you pretty much immediately, which is unheard of at any other social media site. So you don't have to go through that awkward phase of like starting a brand new account and just feeling like you're not speaking to anyone. This very rarely happens with this app, which means you have this instant audience of people to speak to, and that is an amazing feeling. Another pro is that it does have huge potential. Obviously, 100 million downloads in 5 days is a wild stat. We don't know how the momentum is going to stay. Are people going to want to stay on the app and continue posting? Who knows? But it does have a lot of potential. Let's move on to some of the cons. One of the biggest cons, in my opinion, is that it's currently not available to countries within the EU. Now, the reason for that is that the EU have very strict privacy and data regulations in place, which is a good thing, right? I think that's something that all of us should want. And I think it's concerning that this app has not passed those regulations. I think that says a lot about how wild the privacy and data requirements are for this app, and just how much data we're truly giving Meta in addition to all of the data that we already give them if we're on Facebook or Instagram. So that is, in my opinion, one of the biggest cons, because I actually, after doing a lot of research, I'm not quite sure when or if that will be rectified, which means EU countries may never get access to this app. And I think that will massively stunt its popularity too. Another thing to keep in mind, which is aligned with that, is you can't actually delete your Threads account unless you delete your Instagram account. And that's been causing quite a stir within the community because that's a pretty big thing just to throw in there. So it's really important that you keep that in mind and you know that before you get going with Threads. Another con is that it is yet another social media platform that requires more content, and they are working on new features such as direct messages and stuff like that, which is just going to lead to an even bigger workload when it comes to being a content creator. And I totally understand why someone might want to avoid that, right? One thing I will say is that I do think Threads has a lot of repurposing potential. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a huge phase where people were screenshotting their tweets and uploading them like on videos as a reel, and people still do that. I think that's going to have a resurgence. I think people are going to start doing that with their threads now. And also, Meta has made it super easy for people to share their threads to their stories. So I'll give you an example of one of the threads that I shared to my stories recently. And I'm also going to put a screen recording up on the screen so that you can actually see how to do that in case you don't already know. So I'll go to a tweet, just a random one. Let's pick on this. I'm going to click this little send button there, and it will give you the opportunity to tweet it, which is actually super interesting. You can share it, you can copy the link, or you can click add to story. When you click add to story, it's going to open up your Instagram account and automatically add it to your story with this Threads background. If you don't like that Threads background and you want to change it to a color, for example, click the top right hand menu button, click draw, pick the color that you want. Let's say you want it black, and then long press the background. in case you didn't already know how to do this. There you go. And now the background's colors change. If you want more hacks like that to do with your stories, I'll link to one of my story hacks videos because there's loads of stuff that you can do that's really cool. All right, my loves, and that is Threads. I really hope you found this video useful. Can you please let me know in the comments if you want me to dive deep into anything that I just mentioned, because that was like a big masterclass in the entirety of the app, right? All right, thank you so much for watching. If you feel like hanging around, I recommend watching this video. It's all about my top hacks for being consistent on social media, which is going to be super useful to anyone who's thinking about joining yet another social media app, which is Threads, right? Thank you so much for watching this. As always, I can't wait to see you in my next video.